We're always being told to eat clean. But what does that even mean anymore, really? Especially with all the confusing labels and supply chains out there. So today, we're going to dig into the philosophy of one company, Purium, to see what their standard for nutrition is all about. According to them, it's a totally different way of doing things. Okay, let's get into it.
So here's our roadmap. First, we'll look at the big problem they see with our food today. Then we'll get into their claim of being 30 years ahead of the game. After that, we'll check out the proof they say you can verify yourself, follow the journey from seed to shipping, and then explore why they think even organic doesn't go far enough. And finally, we'll pull it all together to see what it all means.
All right, so every good solution starts by defining the problem, right? Let's kick things off with the foundation of their entire argument. What is actually wrong with the food so many of us are eating every single day?
Let me ask you a question, and I bet a lot of you will relate to this. Do you ever just feel, well, kind of off? Not sick, but not great either. That feeling of being tired or bloated, it's become surprisingly normal for a lot of people.
The source actually has a name for these things: health storms. We're talking about not being able to sleep, having no energy, dealing with inflammation, all this stuff. And the big idea here is that these aren't just random little problems. They're all symptoms of a much bigger issue.
And that bigger issue? Well, it's called the Standard American Diet, or SAD for short. And yeah, the acronym kind of fits. It's a diet that's just packed with processed foods, which, since the 70s, have often been loaded with toxins like glyphosate. This is pointed to as the real root cause of all those health storms we just mentioned.
Okay, so now that we've set up the problem, the story shifts to the solution, and it's framed as a choice that was made a long, long time ago, a choice that went completely against what everyone else in the industry was doing.
And this right here, this is the real turning point. Because despite all the issues with our modern food supply, the message is loud and clear. You are not powerless. You have a choice. There is another way.
Now, just look at the contrast being drawn here. On one side, you've got the mainstream food industry, who, it's claimed, just ignored all the warnings about stuff like glyphosate and heavy metals. But on the other side, you have Purium, who they say was already testing for these exact things 30 years ago. So the point is, they were being proactive, while others were reactive, or not even reacting at all.
So, saying you're 30 years ahead is a pretty bold claim, right? How can you actually be sure it's not just talk? Well, this is where we move from claims to something much more concrete: verifiable, third-party proof.
And this is a huge point. They're basically saying, hey, don't just take our word for it. The whole emphasis is on transparency, where anyone can go and look up the certifications and the testing results for themselves.
And here they are, the big ones. We're not talking about some in-house award. These are seals of approval from independent organizations that have really strict standards. You've got USDA Organic, Non-GMO Project Verified, Kosher, and even Glyphosate Residue-Free. Each one of those logos means something pretty significant.
But it doesn't stop with those outside certifications. The source talks about an internal process that they actually describe as obsessive. And the idea is pretty simple. It's not enough to just check the final product. You have to be watching constantly at every single step.
And this table just lays it out so clearly. You can see right here, when the raw ingredients first come in the door, they're testing for heavy metals and pesticides. Then, while the products are being mixed, they're checking for things like gluten and bacteria. And then, finally, the finished products get tested again for potency and nutrient levels before they go anywhere. It's a lot.
So, if you're testing at every stage, it kind of makes you wonder, how is that even possible? Well, that implies you have to control every stage. And that brings us to the next big idea: the power of having complete control over the entire supply chain.
This slide shows the two different worlds. On the left, that's how most companies do it. They buy ingredients from who knows where and then have someone else make their products. The source argues this creates a ton of blind spots. But on the right, you see Purium's model. They are the manufacturer and the distributor. This means they control the whole shebang from start to finish.
And here's what that actually looks like. They partner directly with farmers. They create their own formulas, they make everything in their own facilities, they package it themselves, and then they ship it right to your door. There are no middlemen. Every single step is managed by them, which is presented as being incredibly rare.
Okay, but let's go even deeper. We've talked about testing and control, but the source argues that even a word as powerful as organic doesn't actually tell you the full story. The real secret, they say, isn't on the label, it's in the soil itself.
And I love this distinction. Think about it. Organic is usually about what you avoid. No pesticides, no herbicides. But this philosophy pushes way beyond that. It's about what you actively cultivate. Healthy, living soil that's bursting with life.
And here's that whole idea boiled down to its simplest, most powerful form. A really simple but profound equation. Dead soil equals dead food. It's as simple as that.
So what's the difference? Well, regenerative soil is alive. It's full of microbes, minerals, and nutrients. Depleted soil, on the other hand, is basically just dirt. It's sterile. And the result is a choice between food that is literally alive with nutrition and food that's just empty, even if it looks exactly the same on the outside. Okay, so let's pull all these pieces together, shall we? We've talked about obsessive testing, total control of the supply chain, and soil that's actually alive. So what does this all add up to? What is the ultimate promise here? Well, the promise really starts with what's left out. The guarantee is that you will never find any artificial colors, flavors, or sweeteners, no binders or cheap fillers, no GMOs, no pesticides, and this is a big one, no synthetic vitamins. The whole philosophy is strictly based on plants and whole foods.
And it all comes back to this. This whole thing isn't just about selling products. The big picture idea being presented is one of prevention. It's about using pure whole food nutrition, the kind that grows in that healthy, living soil, to build a defense against those health storms we talked about way back at the beginning.
And that leaves us with this final, really thought-provoking question. It completely reframes how we look at what we eat. It's not just fuel to get through the day. It's a fundamental tool for our health. So, is the food you're eating actually healing you and making you stronger? It's a question worth asking. Thanks for tuning in.